The matchup of the year, the event of the decade. The race between the tortoise and the hare takes place February 1st during the fourth quarter. Vote on Twitter using hashtag Team Tortoise or hashtag Team Hare with hashtag contest, and you could win your own Mercedes-Benz Big Race viewing party. Visit bigrace.com for complete rules.
ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd Podcast.
It's the Herd on ESPN Radio, wherever you may be, however you may be listening. Thanks for making us part of your day, presented by Progressive Insurance. All of our guests via the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, simulcast on ESPNU. 3 more days, and I'm shutting the phone off and going somewhere warm for a couple of weeks. Going to be home alone with Bugsy for about a week here. Wife's already in Florida. It's so funny. My dog, our dog Bugsy, I inherited Bugsy in the relationship. Wife already had him for 7 years, so now he's like 14, 15. He's falling apart. Great dog. French bulldog. Just loves people. Just the best. Really a great dog. You know what I mean? Just a great dog. And the kids sleep with him. He's great. He's funny. He just wants to be petted all day. It's the most loving thing in the world. And he's falling apart. Can't hear, whizzing everywhere. It's brutal. So we've taken him, my wife took him to an animal whisperer. I know, whatever. Yeah, so they went to the animal whisperer, and the whisperer said, well, I'm talking to your dog. He doesn't want to die. He likes the blankets. Switch up his food more, and he feels bad about his bladder, but he can't help himself. So that's what the whisperer apparently said. So my wife leaves, and she's like, now here's the dog's dying. And this morning I get up, and she goes, okay. She wrote a list of 13 things I have to do with a dog. He gets grass-fed beef apparently every day. I don't get grass-fed beef. He's got this certain way to go to the bathroom. I'm like, whoa. If your mom was dying, you wouldn't leave town and hey, fix my mom. Fix the dog. 13 things I have to do every day with the dog.
That's a lot of pressure. You better hope nothing happens to Bugsy while they're away.
I'm just like, I'm not a funeral home here. I don't know what I'm doing. So this is the world I live in. For the next couple of days, I'm going to be a little distracted. I'm dealing with a French bulldog that's spraying everywhere, and I got to feed it 4 or 5 times a day and give it back rubs and cordon off certain parts of the home. So that's a lot of work. But you know what? At some point, I'm going to be dying and spraying everywhere, so hopefully somebody feeds me grass-fed beef, too.
What happens to Bugsy when you go to Florida?
No, we got somebody to watch him. Listen, my next 3 days are filled with doggy dietary concerns. That's my life. I will say this. It's going to get through the holidays. It'll get through, and then it'll probably just give up. I think it kind of feels the holidays. It feels the lights. Can I start with this, though? Is that a lot of times, even experts are wrong, right? Like experts are wrong. Remember when the founder of Warner Brothers, there used to be silent movies, and the founder of Warner Brothers, H.M. Warner, who died in about 58, 60, he said, I like silent movies. His quote was, who the hell wants to hear actors talk? Okay? Thomas Watson, the chairman of IBM, who said, I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers. How about Decca Records? It was a very popular recording company. He said, we don't like the Beatles sound, and guitar music is on the way out. Or Popular Mechanics, forecasting the relentless march of science. Computers in the future may weigh no more than 1.5 tons. So even experts completely whiff. And it's very interesting. It's the 17th of December. Saturday, all the college bowl games start, right? Last couple of weeks of the NFL, the bowl games. And everybody said with this college football playoff, and I was one of them, the big concern was the more and the larger the playoff system, the less relevant the college football regular season will be. And it's always been great. Urgency every Saturday. And everybody was concerned it'll make the other bowls completely irrelevant. Everybody's going to want to watch Florida, Oregon, Florida State, Oregon, Bama, Ohio State. Nobody will care about anything else. Well, what's really happened, college football used to get Saturday. Now with the playoff system, it gets Wednesday because it gets Tuesday night when the committee's votes come out. Then Wednesday we all argue about it. This morning I just got handed to me the entire bowl rundown, time, place, who's going to be where at ESPN covering. I've never been more interested in the bowl season because now I want to watch TCU yap, 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 we got robbed. All right, go play Ole Miss. I want to hear and see Baylor yap, 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 we got robbed. All right, go play Michigan State in the Cotton Bowl. I would never watch those games. Peach Bowl, Cotton Bowl, now I'm all in. Something to grab onto. They found a hook. Forget the other, there's Ohio State, Alabama, Oregon, Florida State. But I think it's one of those things where there was a sense that this committee would kind of diffuse, or it would somehow erode the bowl system. You're going to have these two big bowl games leading into a bowl, and nobody will care about the rest of the bowls. I'm more into the bowls this year than ever, and they start Saturday. So it really has gone the opposite of what a lot of people thought. The regular season now, I said, New York City never talks about college football. Regularly, this year in the fall, I'd be driving around, turn on New York City Sports Radio. They'd be talking about it. I'm like, what? I never did that before. I didn't do that for 30 years. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I thought this was a very, very interesting take yesterday. So we've seen this with the Lakers. We've seen it with the Yankees. Sometimes you get this patriarch of a family, George Steinbrenner, Jerry Buss, and they have this focus and this drive and this passion, and then they hand the keys to their organization to their kids who are really educated. I mean, they educated their kids. They're smart. They've got a proximity to greatness. But do they care? Are they great? Are they passionate? Did they live through the Depression? Or did they drive Beamers to their prep schools? Do they have fear? Do they have drive? And it's very interesting because Bill Madden of the New York Daily News has been covering baseball forever. It was on the Mike Lupica show yesterday, 98.7 in New York. And I thought to myself, A-Rod now has humiliated the Yankees and himself, right? George wouldn't want him on the field. Forget paying him $61 million. George would fight that thing every day of his life. He'd go public with it. But he wouldn't let him near the field. The difference is Steinbrenner's sons, well, they want to get some of their money back. We're paying him $61 million, so dang it, he's going to be the DH. This is what Bill Madden said about A-Rod's season coming up.
I've always, in the back of my mind, thought that he won't even show up in Tampa, that he's going to realize that it's going to be an embarrassment for him to try to show that he can play. He knows he can't play without the juice. He's told his lawyers that. We've reported that. And so I always, in the back of my mind, thought that sometime between now and February, he will go to the Yankees and try to make a deal and work out a settlement.
But what's really interesting to me, and we've seen the erosion of the Lakers, would George Steinbrenner even let A-Rod wear that uniform again? Deep down, be honest, he wouldn't. The second generation gets it. The daughter gets the team. The son gets the team. Suddenly it's about bottom line, selling tickets. George, it was about winning. Winning would sell tickets. And I'm not taking shots at the Steinbrenners or the Busses. It is the reality of handing the keys to family members who often have proximity to greatness, but that doesn't equal greatness. They have proximity to passion and drive. That doesn't equal passion and drive. And I have Mitch Kupchak, Laker GM, joining me in 2 hours. But with this whole thing with A-Rod, he can't play anymore. DH max. I bet you Steinbrenner wouldn't let him near the field. That's how deeply and passionately the baseball team meant to George when he woke up in the morning. I just don't feel it. I don't feel it feels that way to the kids. It's about, can we get value for the deal? George would be like, insurance, write it off, get him out of here. He's not stepping foot in that stadium. I think that is the challenge you get now, where these patriarchs, they own these franchises, they pass, they hand them to their sons, and they don't love the business like Dad did. They just don't. They went to a prep school, their buddies got into technology or horses or soccer, and they just don't care about baseball. They don't care about it like their dad did. They don't go restless at night. Will this promotion work? Will that shortstop work? Who are we going to draft? They don't wake up with that. They're close to it, but that's not who they are. Limited time offer, send the Peppermint Rose Bouquet, 1-800-FLOWERS, save $20, go to 1-800-FLOWERS.com/ESPN. Also, I'll tell you, this thing with Jim Harbaugh, everybody is waiting on Jim Harbaugh. The Raiders could be waiting on him. The Jets could be waiting on him. Michigan football could be waiting on him. At the NFL level, it doesn't matter if you keep waiting. But if you're Michigan today, who's your second choice? Because I got a list this morning of the candidates for Michigan. 8 of them would say no. Bob Stoops isn't leaving Oklahoma. Les Miles isn't leaving LSU. It's a better job. Butch Jones isn't leaving Tennessee. Kevin Sumlin's not leaving A&M. I'm getting those guys. You better have a 2 because the world is going to bid on Jim Harbaugh. Dolphins, Raiders, there are going to be a lot of people throwing a lot of money at Harbaugh's agent.
Want more of the Herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Todd McShay just released his first mock draft. Marcus Mariota, Oregon, going to Tampa Bay, number 1. Jameis Winston going to Tennessee, number 2. And those guys will be asked to start really soon, which I think is problematic. And I don't think Mariota's going to be the star everybody thinks. And I don't think Jameis Winston's going to be the star that everybody thinks. I think they'll win games. I like the size of both. Last year's quarterbacks, Bridgewater and Manziel, I didn't like the size. I didn't even like the physical being, the size. Not interested. Mariota's a big, tall guy. I worry about his weight, and Jameis Winston is a big kid. So that's the first mock draft. Mariota, Oregon, and Tampa Bay. Winston,
Colin,
Tennessee.
real quick, because we're going to be talking about this guy for months now. Mariota.
Yeah. All right, so we get into this first generation, second generation stuff. And I find it interesting that the Yankees are sitting there with A-Rod, who's really embarrassed the organization. It's not like when they gave Darryl Strawberry a second chance. Because Darryl Strawberry had personal demons, or like a Doc Gooden. This is like a guy who had it all and just abused it. And now, according to sources, can't play a lick. Doesn't believe he can play without the juice. Bad hips, 39, hasn't played in a year, totally shot, owe him $60 million. My belief is George Steinbrenner wouldn't let him on the field. And I also, and I've said this about the Lakers, and I have Mitch Kupchak in an hour and a half, is I don't think Mitch Kupchak has all the power with the Lakers, and I don't think they would have signed Kobe to that deal with Jerry Buss. Jerry would sign you, but you had to be in your prime. He let Shaq go. And Shaq won a title. Kobe's not Shaq at that point. So I find it very interesting what is happening in sports when the patriarch passes, hands it to his kids. You think they have the same last name and address. It's not the same person. They think differently. Chad, you're in the Herd. Go ahead.
Hey, Bud. Great show.
Thanks.
Hey, Dave Ramsey, a guy I like to listen to, he says first-generation millionaires, they can make million-dollar decisions at the snap because they're invested from the very beginning. They know what's best. He said second generation, they can't do that. They make decisions what's best for them. He goes on to say first-generation millionaires, you'll never know they're a millionaire. They live in the same house, drive the same car. Second generation, they love to show their money. They love to show their power.
Yep.
And I think it applies to what you're talking about with the ownership.
Yeah, I mean, the Steinbrenners now, they're in the horse business. Oh, they love horses. You know, George came from shipping. Not glamorous. Shipping, baseball, Olympics, country, patriotism. The sons, and the cars, horses, real estate. Different bait. I've been told by somebody I trust they'd sell the franchise if the right offer came down. They're not looking to sell it, but if it came down, they'd think about it. They'd listen. That's somebody I trust in New York City. So it's a different world. I mean, it is a different world. All right. I've talked about this, the Michigan job. I think it's a good job. I think it's a very good job. But I've been saying this for years with Notre Dame fans, that it's not the job Notre Dame fan thinks it is. Because 18-year-olds don't care about tradition. They care about vibe. Are you winning now? Are you cool now? Oregon's winning now. They're cool. They don't care about Notre Dame's tradition. Right now, they think LSU's a way better job than Notre Dame. Because LSU wins every year. They play for national titles. And I've said this, Auburn to an 18-year-old who runs a 4.3, Auburn could be a much cooler vibe than Michigan. And I think 4 things matter when these jobs come up. I really do. I think 4 things matter. What is a great college football job? Because Michigan right now is an all-timer. It's up there with Notre Dame, right? But I don't think Notre Dame's a top 7-8 job anymore. Older media think it is. Notre Dame fans think it is. I think it's got real roadblocks. Isolated, bad weather, academically rigid, religious overtones, not in a glamorous conference. I think it's a good job. I think Florida's a better job. USC's a better job. Alabama's a better job. Texas is a better job. I really believe that. But I was saying there's 4 things that make a job to me. Number 1, by a mile, your proximity to high school talent. Are you in a state that produces 40 Division I players a year minimum? 40. And then to your surrounding states, offer the same number. Not at Michigan. Not at Michigan anymore. So when I look at top 7-8 jobs, USC, Florida State, Florida, Texas, Georgia, LSU, Auburn, to me, is higher ranked than Michigan. A lot of old media disagree with that. And I think Michigan will pay $6 million, so they'll get somebody good. But they're going all in on Harbaugh. And the names I see listed, they're not getting these guys. And if they get Dan Mullen, I like Dan Mullen. Was he really your number 1 choice? I like Greg Schiano. I like him. Is he really your number 1 choice? Listen, Nebraska had an opening. They hired a 62-year-old guy running the 10th best program in the Pac-12. That's the new day. That's the new day. Penn State had an opening. Penn State's unbelievable, right? They went to the essentially, historically, worst program in the SEC, got their coach. Now, I think he'll work. I like him. But, it's Penn State's already on their second coach. First one bolted. I mean, I'm telling you, it's a new world we live in. It is a new world. Yankees and Lakers aren't what they were. Their kids don't care as much. These traditional powers aren't what we think. I'm not saying Michigan's a bad job. It's a good job. It's a very good job. I don't put it in my top 8. I listed my top 8 this morning. I don't have it in there. Mike, you're in the herd. Go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Colin? How are you doing today?
Good, great.
Big time fan of your show. Obviously, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm a student at the University of Michigan.
Okay.
I understand where you're coming from. I think Jim Harbaugh, as much as, and I follow the Michigan football search, obviously, as much as everybody's saying on the Michigan side that it's a possibility, in my mind, until he signs the dotted line, I don't believe it's going to happen. But as far as Plan Bs go,
who is it? Who's Plan B?
Well, as far as what my opinion is this: look at what Florida did and look at what Nebraska did. I think at this day and age, a lot of successful coaches at big-time programs don't want to bolt because they know that with all the exposure that college football has, the new playoff, there's more opportunity if they're in a stable environment. So I think a Plan B guy could be somebody that potentially Florida got, like a Jim McElwain sort of moving his way up the ladder. Maybe Greg Schiano would be good. I mean, at the end of the day, all Michigan needs is a winner. We don't need to have the hottest name on the block. Well,
nobody's saying they do, but if you look at what's happening, you would take an Urban Meyer if he was available. You'd take a Nick Saban. The big dogs often do get, let's be honest. Look who was up for the Texas job. I'm just saying tomorrow, if Greg Schiano's listed as the coach, is everybody at Michigan happy? And I have nothing against Greg. I think there's something there. He has to get better with the media. He has to be less rigid. He's got to be more personality-driven. It's college football. He can be too much of a drill sergeant. I'm just saying the world, they're putting it all in on Harbaugh. And they're going all in. We're still waiting here. Florida's had a coach for 2 weeks. Where are we going here? What are we doing here? All right, coming up next, of the many things we have today, a very interesting guy. College All-American quarterback, goes to the NFL 6 years. And I told my guys, Marcus Mariota, 6'4", good-looking, good kid. Little thin for me, comes out of a great college program. Now everybody has mock draft this morning, number 1 draft pick. So I said Brock Huard, a very popular radio host out west, works for ESPN. I'm going to ask him about Pete Carroll because apparently he had an interesting conversation with Pete Carroll recently. And what does he make of Mariota? Because I see some bust qualities here. I really do. A very, very smart guy joining us on Deck the Herd.
You're in the Herd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
Yesterday I went to get gas. It was $2.70 a gallon. And there's a combination of reasons why gas prices are going down. We have a much more robust crude oil production growth in America, so we're producing a lot of our own oil, and we're less dependent on foreign contributors to it. That's a big part of it, apparently. You got this thing called the shale oil boom in the Midwest, producing in the Dakotas. Incredible gas prices right now. And for the record, anytime we're less reliant on the Middle East for anything, I'm all in. It's just amazing how low the gas prices right now are. Vince, you said you paid $2.55 yesterday. I paid $2.70, and I paid at a place that's busy, that could probably jack up a rate if they wanted to because it's a busy intersection.
You're in a more expensive area of town than I am, too.
Well, I mean, does that matter? Some people in that business say it doesn't matter. Oh, it seems to me the gas is pricier in the most congested corner of every town I've ever lived in. It's about 15 cents more a gallon. People in the business will deny that, but that's what it seems like to me. I may just start driving around in circles burning gas. It's like it's so cheap now. It's like hanging out at the gas station. Yeah, fantastic. It's so much fun. By the way, you only get a couple more days of me because then I am literally hiding. I'm going Howard Hughes Friday at 1 Eastern, 10 Pacific. I'm not even going to be around. I am off the grid. Sasquatch can't find me. GPS won't find me. I won't even look at a phone for 10 days. So you don't have many shots at me. This is it, next couple of days. So, interesting, Brock Huard, 6 years in the NFL, star in the Pac-12, now 710 ESPN in Seattle. 3 things I want to hit on. First, the mock draft just came out today. Marcus Mariota, Oregon quarterback, listed as number 1 to Tampa Bay. Looks thin to me. Plays in an Oregon system that produces big numbers, doesn't translate to the NFL, Brock. I see warning signs. Do you?
Did you see his dad at the Heisman Award ceremony?
His dad's a large man.
His dad's a big man. I play with a lot of Polynesian men. I don't think in time he's going to have a real challenge in that way. And better evidence than that, all joking aside, is the work he did this offseason. And, in fact, this piece that's going to come out in the ESPN, the magazine, was really fun to put together and to go back and look at, in particular, the Michigan State game. That one stood out to me early in the season. You remember, it feels like forever ago. But there was 3-4 plays in that game that, A, were Heisman candidate plays, and B, said, I like that. He's not just fleeing to run. He's actually staying right in that pocket. Wow, he just ran through Calhoun's arm tackle. He just ran through that tackle. He just showed, I think, some of that strength and some of the bulk that he did add this offseason with the rest of his team, and there is no red flag. There is no red flag other than you saying to me this week, well, he looks a little like you, and you remember your NFL career. You're kind of frail. You're going to get injured a lot. He's like, well, how big are you? And right now he is about what I am, 6'4", 6'5", 220.
Well, Bill,
but you know what?
My regular dude,
but you know what?
Big.
But you know what? He runs 4.45, right? He is so athletic, and that honestly, that does not concern me. Teddy Bridgewater now, that's a different concern. Narrow shoulder, 200 pounds. I mean, we're talking when Marcus walks in the room. Have you seen Marcus in person?
No.
Surprisingly, he's a big man.
Okay.
I've probably been around him a half dozen times, and every time it's like, wow, he is just about my size. I mean, almost eyeball to eyeball. He's a big man.
6 years in the NFL, high school All-American, great college player, now a broadcaster in Seattle with Pete Carroll. Pete's seen from the outside as flaky. Crazy Pete. Knows personnel. But we don't think of him as a Belichickian X's and O's guy. You disagree.
We had a great chat with Pete right about this after the Philadelphia game. I don't know how you felt going into the Philly game or how much you talked about it. What was your feeling going into that Sunday of Chip Kelly's system, Oregon's X's and O's versus Pete and his system?
Mark Sanchez has never proven to me he can beat the best defense in the league. So I liked Seattle. Mark Sanchez, I think, is better than butt fumble. But Seattle's defense is next level.
We came out of that game, and we sat with Pete, as we do every single Monday, on our radio show down at the Seahawk facility. And it was great. After the show ended, especially after wins. He's really great, can stick around a few more minutes. And he said, you know what? Gosh, we got him, man. We really, really loved our plan. And he said, I wish in some ways we could go back to, the college days and rework and rethink some of our plan. And it got Mike Salk, my co-host, and I thinking of, boy, you don't really get the credit, do you, Pete, of the X's and O's. People don't think of you as a grinder.
No, he's a raw motivator, run through the tunnel.
Put his X's and O's up against anybody. Put his X's and O's and what he's done in this league over the last 3 years defensively up against anybody.
You know what I like about Pete? Whereas Rex Ryan's a defensive guy, but I always felt hurt the offense. Pete knows what he doesn't know. He allows coordinators empowerment.
Very well said. Lane Kiffin this year. I did a bunch of Alabama games, and we were talking about Pete, and I said, Lane, you've got a unique perspective. You're now working with Saban, right? And you worked with Pete. You worked with two very, very acclaimed coaches. I said, similarities, difference? You know what he said along those lines? Exactly to your point, Colin. He goes, you know what? What separates them is I could give them my play sheet right here. I'd give them my whole offensive play sheet, and Saban and Pete could call the game. You give that play sheet to Rex Ryan, foreign language, right? I have no idea what this is. Red, right, tight, swap, flip. Yeah. Let me just get back to my defense. In Lane's perspective, he said both Nick Saban could call the game, could take over any phase of the game, and Pete Carroll, likewise, very similar in that way.
But they let young guys take it over. And by the way, Pete historically likes young offensive guys that a lot of other coaches, Stark, Lane, were very young at the time. Nobody knew who they were. Brock Huard joining us, the Herd on ESPN Radio. Somebody said something yesterday I thought it was interesting. You know how big the San Francisco-Seattle rivalry is because you live in the Pacific Northwest. That Harbaugh won't go to college because right now his brother John has a ring and Pete is in the catbird seat with a ring. And that bothers Harbaugh. Do you sense that?
Boy, I don't know if I would lean in either of those. I would go to this one. I would go to how hard you have to work and recruit collegiately right now, and especially at these preeminent programs you're talking about. You're going to go to Michigan, and you're going to compete against Urban Meyer in the Big Ten. You're going to compete against James Franklin and Penn State in your division. You're competing against guys that are all in, all day, every day, 365. And he expended an amazing amount of energy at Stanford and his staff. I remember talking to Luganville about this. Like, when I played Stanford, they were just soft. They were finesse. They were none of these guys. And he said nobody outworked Harbaugh and his staff in recruiting. Does he have the energy now? After being in the NFL the number of years and nearly climbing to the very top of it, are you going to tell me he's got the energy to go back to college and do it 365 from a recruiting perspective?
You know a lot of coaches. As a former player in the league for 6 years, Brock Huard, a lot of NFL guys, they don't like the recruiting thing.
No.
At all.
No.
And it's gotten more competitive.
Yes.
It demands more.
Yes.
When you talk to coaches, do they say that?
Oh, absolutely. For sure. And now with what the SEC has done and all of these recruiters and all of the money that these programs now have, you used to be a little bit limited, right? And you would talk to some of these programs and they'd say, budget, we can't recruit more than 500 miles. We got to get on a plane. We're in trouble. I go down and see Bielema, right? And he's got private jets lined up left and right during his bye week.
He's going to California
sure,
if he has to.
I got here, boom. He got out to Utah. He got all these places because, now that money has afforded so many of these schools within their budget to do whatever you need to do recruiting-wise. So, man, recruiting is a beast. And that's the one hurdle. I think Harbaugh makes so much sense going back to Michigan. I would love to see it for college football's sake. I just don't know if he's got that kind of energy to jump back into that game.
Great seeing you, man.
You too.
Getting a lot of Michigan fans all worked up. I'm not saying you're a bad job. I'm saying your perception is, I believe, not reality. I don't think that Michigan believes it's the best job in the country. And I don't think it's in that class. I think things have changed. I do not think it's got the cool vibe. It doesn't have the warm weather. It doesn't have the glamorous conference. People now mock the Big Ten. And academically, it is an elite university. Socially and academically, Rich Rod had talked to me about that. And a lot of kids go up there and, Notre Dame signs good recruiting classes. They lose about 5 kids a year. Those kids are like, wow, it's tough. You got to go to class. It's hard. And it's in the middle of nowhere. So I'm just saying Michigan's all in on Jim Harbaugh. The Jets may want him. The Raiders want him. The Dolphins will want him. I'm not sure he wants to go back into that grind. By the way, Michigan's recruiting class is falling apart. So every day some other great high school guy signs, and you already got a talent deficit. It's interesting. They're all in on Harbaugh. I think Michigan believes it's done. And behind the scenes, maybe it is. Maybe he's agreed to $8 million a year. Maybe they'll laugh at everybody. But, man, they're going. They are wait. There's a reason they're waiting and waiting and waiting. They're waiting for their guy. Coming up next. You got one? Coming up next, I'm told.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
One of the guys I like to bring on a few times a year. He's never ducked us. He always answers the tough questions and does so with thought, is Laker general manager Mitch Kupchak. And I have been critical, as have many, of the current situation, but I also realize that it is a difficult situation when a patriarch of a family passes. Sometimes you hand it to family members who don't always get along, may have differing views on franchise and the future, and that is where Mitch Kupchak is now as the Laker GM. Thank you for joining us this morning, Mitch.
Good morning, Colin. How are you?
I am great. You know, there's been a belief, Mitch, through the years that be great or terrible in the NBA, don't get stuck in the middle, it's quicksand. But I don't think you've ever been comfortable with the bottoming out theory. Are you comfortable with what I'll just use the Sixers, but let's call it the bottoming out theory. Are you comfortable with it?
Well, I think every team in the NBA has to look, at their situation. There's a lot to take into consideration. Every team has different picks. Every team has a different cap situation in terms of flexibility. We do think that Los Angeles, is a destination for players, despite a lot of the rule changes and the latest collective bargaining. So, we think we have advantages. I know other teams feel they have advantages, but everybody's got to look at it, from where they sit.
You only get your first-round pick if it's in the top 5, and that puts you, Mitch, in kind of a different position because you have built winning teams. You have built a remarkable American iconic brand, but you only get your draft pick if you're really, really bad. Does that ever make you uncomfortable on a day-to-day, game-to-game basis?
Well, what you're saying is correct. That was the deal we made with Phoenix to acquire Steve Nash. And, it's beyond our control. There's nothing that we can do, or there's nothing that we will do, to try to influence where, we'll end up at the end of the season. So that's just going to play out. Our coach and our players, have been instructed to win every game possible. And there's really no other way to approach it. So that'll play out, the way it plays out towards the end of the season. If we get the pick, it's because we were a very, very bad team. If we don't end up with the pick, it'll go on to Phoenix, and we'll be off that obligation. And we'll continue. We have Houston's pick, and we have a lot of flexibility this summer with our cap. And there's nothing we can do about that. We're not going to send a message to lose games.
The world, Mitch, has changed. There's extraordinary money in local cable TV deals. Your Time Warner deal is I think it's historic. Are teams like the Lakers, do you now consider your TV partners when structuring a roster? What if they come to you and say, hey, this is not a very engaging roster. We're giving you $100 million a year. Do you have to have those discussions today with cable TV partners?
Colin, to my knowledge, they don't have that kind of influence with the organization. I do know the people at Time Warner, and they've always expressed, that they're very happy, with us. Certainly everybody, including our TV partners and advertising partners, wants to win every game. But they know over the course of time it's going to end up being a very, very good deal. Having said that, I feel pressure to try to win every year. I know that makes our fans happy. It makes our radio partner, ESPN, and makes our TV people happy. It makes a lot of people happy.
We're in, Mitch, it's a different world. You don't have to live in New York anymore to be a star. You can be a star in Oklahoma City. You can be a star in Portland, Oregon. The Knicks aren't very good, and the Brooklyn's not great, and the Lakers are struggling. You don't have to just be these days with social media and the way the world works. Are you concerned at all that with the cultural change, even in the star-driven NBA, that you don't have to go to the Lakers anymore, and that makes your rebuild tougher, perhaps?
It is a challenge. You have three ways to improve your team, via trade, via free agency, or through the draft. And we're going to try to improve our team each and every one of those ways. I cannot predict what will happen this summer or the summer after this summer or the summer after that in terms of free agency. A lot of players have opt-ins and opt-outs in their contract, so we're not even sure who may or may not be a free agent at this time. So to plan to get somebody and to know who that person is, that's not possible. But I do know that having the ability to pursue free agents or the ability to take players from other teams because you have cap space, I do know that's valuable, and we do have that kind of flexibility. But we also have the draft, and then, we'll look to make trades.
You said a couple weeks ago that you felt, Kobe's got 2 years left, and then he's going to move out, retire with dignity, still be able to play, but retire. Do you still believe that this morning?
I do. That's my understanding, based on being around Kobe and discussions with him. He's never said, Mitch, this is it. But the indication has always been, let's get these last 2 years in. I think I can do it. And he's 36, so he'll be 38 in 2 years. Now, once again, I'm not going to sit here and say what's going to happen in 2 years, but I did make a comment a week or two ago. If you're looking to see Kobe play and you want to see him play before he retires, don't wait 2 years. Buy a ticket this year or next year. And beyond that, if he does come back, then that's gravy. But I cannot predict what he'll do in 3 years. That's never been a part of, I think, what he was thinking about a year or so ago.
Laker GM Mitch Kupchak heard on ESPN Radio. If, let's say, 2 years is done, and Kobe's shooting his 43%, and he's, he can score. Kobe could score in 10 years. He's one of the, he's a great individual scorer. But would you recommend in 2 years, even if he was still averaging 18 a game, would you recommend re-signing him? Or do you think there is a moment in time to move off the iconic player and start in another direction? What would you do in 2 years if he wanted to stay?
If he's playing at a high level, and, we were able to put our team together with some vision, in other words, have cap space to acquire players that help us going forward and help us, win right away, I don't know why you would not consider bringing Kobe back. I don't think in 2 years, if he looks at our roster and says, I can't win with this roster, I don't think he's going to want to play and lose, 40 to 50 games. If the roster is attractive and we've got some young players or some veteran players that he feels it will allow him to wake up in the morning and say, hey, listen, I want to go to practice and I want to play tonight, then I think that's something he would consider.
Kobe's yelled at, there was a report the other day yelling at teammates. He maybe barked at you. What's your relationship with Kobe like this morning?
I was at that practice, and it was much overblown. It was a lot of what they call trash talking today, and it's hard for me to remember what we did 30 years ago when I played. I think there was some of that going on, but there's a lot more going on today. I will say that, and we have a couple of guys in practice that really love to go at it. Maybe it was a little edgy, towards the end of practice. And I was talking to our coach, when I heard Kobe say something, I heard my name mentioned. I didn't even really hear what he said. I was talking to our coach and our trainer at the time, but I wrote it off as purely a part of what goes on in our practice every day. Now, the next day we played San Antonio, and, of course, the story blew up, and it was a big deal. And I think Kobe admitted that maybe it was a little edgy even for him. But we played really well, and the guys responded. So, take it as you may. I didn't think it was that big a deal. But if you're going to play with Kobe and you're going to practice with him, then you better be ready to compete.
Do you talk to him often away from the Lakers? Do you ever call him and just have questions, gripes?
Yeah, we do. In this day and age, a lot of times, it is texting. And sometimes you'll text back and forth, and then you get to the point where with a lot of text, it doesn't make sense. And then I'll say, hey, give me a call, or he'll say, call me, and we have a conversation. Does not happen daily, does not happen weekly. Depends on the time of the year. During the summer, it might be more. During certain parts of the season, it might be more. At practice, we'll chat. But we're not going to sit down on the bench during practice and have a private conversation for 45 minutes. It doesn't really work that way. He trusts us, to put together the best possible team. And he weighs in every now and then, but it's not, like he's, on the phone with me every day. Not at all.
TV ratings are down 28%. Julius Randle got hurt. There's been some negative press. Are you at least concerned that the rebuild is going more slowly than you thought? Is that fair of me to say?
Well, I saw the ratings, and I also saw, I don't know at what point it was compared to. I heard you just say 28%, but I also saw that the Clippers were way down also, which you would not think would be the case. They're playing very well, and they have a good record. So there's something there going on that doesn't really fall into my expertise. We did not expect Julius Randle, to break his leg, of course. Going into the season, there was a concern that Steve Nash wouldn't make it through the year, which prompted us to go out, and try to bring in some point guards. So I can't say that we didn't have concern about that. It's a process. There's no doubt. Nick Young on the first day of practice tore a ligament in his thumb, and he missed, the first part of the season. I think we're 500 balls since he came back, which is not good by Lakers standards, but maybe it's heading in the right direction. That's a part of the NBA, the injury part. And yes, we are set back a little bit. Am I concerned? I wouldn't say concerned. It's a continuing challenge.
Do you, before we let you go, Mitch Kupchak, Mitch, and this is relationships between general managers, Brian Cashman and the Steinbrenners. A lot of it is we're not privy to. Do you feel right now your relationship with the Buss family, are you completely happy with it? Is it too public? Do you have access? How do you feel about that relationship today?
It is very public, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be. This franchise is a magnet for attention and controversy. It's been that way since I've been here, and I've been here a very, very long time. And that will continue. My relationship with the family, I think, is excellent.
Okay.
I work very closely, with many of the siblings. One or two of them, do not come in every day, but I have what I think are good relationships with them. And, a year and a half or almost 2 years out since Dr. Buss's passing, I think everybody is comfortable with where they are.
Can you say,
yes.
Mitch, could you ever say, guys, I'm dropping the hammer on this, basketball decision, let me take over? Do you feel comfortable in a room saying, I'm going to make this call? Do you have that power?
It's never been that way. I wouldn't know really how to deal with something like that. It's not been that way since I've been here. Dr. Buss, even with Jerry West, he's the owner, and he would always have final say. Most of the time, he would defer to the basketball people, which would be Jerry. And then when Jerry retired in 2000, would be me. But from time to time, as an owner you would expect, he would feel strongly about something, and he would say, well, I'm not doing that, and we're doing this. And that's the way it's going to continue.
Yeah. Hey, before we go, do you call him Nick or Swaggy up to his face?
I call him Nick.
Okay. That seems more formidable for a general manager. I appreciate that formality.
Yeah, and I read yesterday our coach, is going to call him Nicholas, especially when he's upset with him.
Like his mom.
Well, that's my college coach. When he got upset with me, he would call me Mitchell, and my mother would call me Mitchell. Everybody else in my life called me Mitch.
All right, Lakers Thunder. That is Friday, 10:30 on ESPN. We always appreciate you answering the question, Mitch. Good luck.
Tom, thank you.
Want more of the herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Pretty big day in America in our relationship with Cuba today, if you've not paid attention. United States and Cuba will now start talks on, having like a normal, full diplomatic relations. And that's the biggest shift in policy toward Cuba in decades. How about that? I tell you, when I lived in Tampa, Cubans made great neighbors. Very warm, gracious. And the food's incredible. That was my favorite part of Tampa. There was a Cuban influence, Ybor City. Great food. If you ever go to Tampa, Ybor City is just all sorts of good restaurants. And, yeah, how about that? Looks like the relationship between the United States and Cuba, at least from this point forward, will be normalized. There'll be an embassy, an American embassy there. It's really beautiful. I've never been there, but they speculated that when the relationship would eventually get normalized, and I think it's a wonderful thing that it does, that it would become the East Coast Vegas, because nobody wants to really go to Atlantic City. I mean, let's be honest. The people said, Cuba could become like the Vegas, like the place you kind of go to party and have fun. The beaches are amazing. The food's tremendous. I don't know.
Colin, you want to know why you haven't been to Cuba?
I have never been to Cuba. I would love to go to Cuba.
You want to know why you haven't been? Because you're not allowed to go to Cuba.
Well, right now I'm not allowed. Yeah, I'm not allowed.
I wasn't sure if you knew.
Well, some Americans are allowed to go there. Like for instance, I wanted to get Dan Le Batard on. I just saw this news 5 minutes ago, and I'm like, I want to talk to Le Batard about this. I'm fascinated by Cuba. I really am. When I lived in Tampa, they had Cuban parts of the city, the food. It's amazing. It's like this little, for me, it's like this little mystery that's going to unfold here. There's been movies about our relationships. It's been adversarial. And it looks like the policy today in America, we're wrapping our arms more around Cuba, which I think is an amazing thing for so many Americans, especially living down in the state of Florida. So that's fascinating to me. Kind of unmapped land for my generation. Pretty cool. We got to get Le Batard's show could be pretty interesting today. He'll probably break down the American League East, but if he really should just spend 3 hours on Cuba today. I'd be loved to listen to those stories today with Le Batard. Not that I don't love Rosillo's show, but Le Batard today's show could be really interesting. 30 college bowl games live December, ESPN Radio, also on the free TuneIn Radio app. Just to show you the power of our brand, The Herd, listen to this. President Barack Obama, his approval rating last week, Monday, 43%. After he appeared on our show, it's up to 44. Yep. All you presidents out there struggling, not popular, is where you come. You come not meet the press. You come right here. Next day, pow, America love the guy. A little herd help will mobilize your audience. I got to tell you, this I am fascinated by this Jim Harbaugh to Michigan thing. I think it's fascinating. You're getting all sorts of reports out there, and I'll tell you what's happening behind the scenes. There's about 5 guys, Trace Armstrong, former Chicago Bear, Jimmy Sexton, Tom Condon. There's a guy named Neil in Ohio, Cleveland, who is a big agent. There's about 5 to 6 guys out there that are the biggest agents in the power brokers in college football. And what happens in situations like this is a coach doesn't want his athletic director or his boss to come up and say, did you talk to Michigan? I didn't talk to Michigan. So he has his agent do it for him. Remember when David Letterman was going to leave and he had this thing in his contract where David Letterman couldn't go and interview and do things and leave. So what he did, he brought everybody to him. And the way David Letterman's agent got around it, he said, we won't go and do interviews with other networks. We'll make them make pitches to us. And NBC was like, yeah, we didn't think about that. Then he went to CBS. So what happens with these power brokers is the coach at the school can say, I haven't talked to Michigan. I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't talked to Michigan. The key is that coach has talked to his agent and said, yeah, take calls from Michigan. There is a lot of that going on right now. I thought it was very interesting. About a week ago, at some internet sports book, they shut down betting on the Michigan job because a profound amount of money had come in on the Harbaugh as taking the job. And the sportsbook thought, okay, somebody knows more than we do. We're shutting it down. Now, when I used to live in Vegas, I remember talking to a sportsbook director. They disallowed, when I first moved to the city, Vegas, you could bet Ivy League football games. Now, I don't bet that many games first, and I would never bet Ivy League. But for years, you could bet Columbia versus Harvard. Well, Vegas was getting smoked on it because the games weren't on television, and 9 guys in New York bet it, and they knew more than Vegas. And they were getting destroyed on the Ivy League. So Vegas is like, what are we doing this for? So they said, no more betting Ivy League football games. We can't see these things. Some guy named Mel in New York was taking casinos for, a bank every week. So literally a sports book or a sports betting site said big money came in on Harbaugh, Michigan. It's going to happen. And they said, okay, we're taking this off the board because there's that kind of stuff going around. Agents, power brokers, talking, athletic directors. It is spinning fast here because starting Monday, there's a dead period in recruiting. You want to put a staff together then. That's your break, 2 weeks to get your staff together. Because when that ends, you want your coaches out. So you want to name a coach. You can't put a staff together in 6 days. You can't do that. So you have got to get this puppy settled here in about 5 or 6 days to me, and then give your coach 2 weeks to put a staff together. When the dead period ends, you got to hit it for 5 weeks and try to salvage any of this class. National Signing Day is first day of February. Okay, in the NFL, you get 7 draft picks. College, you get 25. You have a disastrous class. It sets you back, way back. Again, I'd like to announce this. Nobody else will. Barack Obama, the president, 43% approval rating before our show, 44% after. Yeah, it's a great country. But you know what's greater about it? When you show up on this show and talk. Pow. You could sell SodaStream. You could do anything you want on this show. You can go to Meet the Press. Nobody watches Meet the Press. Nobody's watched that in 20 years. This is what they're watching. Not watching Bob Schaefer. I think he retired like a year ago. Nobody's watching Stephanopoulos. Telling you right now. This is where presidents come to elevate their Q score.
Colin Cowherd. The Thundering Herd Podcast.
You see this? The United States Olympic Committee, the board, heard presentations from 4 candidate cities, Boston, L.A., San Francisco, and Washington. And they voted to enter a field that already includes Rome, Berlin, Paris, probably going to jump in. So next month, a decision on which city the U.S. will put forward for a bid is expected next month. United States hasn't hosted the Summer Games since Atlanta in '96. That's one of those things where you think inviting the Olympics into your city would be a transportation nightmare. But in both the Los Angeles and Utah Olympics, locals, fearing traffic would be god-awful, basically left town. When I covered the Salt Lake City Olympics, which were Mitt Romney came in to save them, and they were spectacular. You could not, and I used to ski a lot in Park City. You could not believe what happened to the traffic. It disappeared. And I would be with cabbies or bus drivers going to and from the airport or to and from events, and they would say, I've never seen traffic like this. Because the way it works at the Olympics, as a media member, they have these scheduled buses you have to get on certain times and wait for them. And I would sit up near the front, get on early, sit and talk to the driver, and he would say, I've never seen it like this. In Los Angeles, which is not a great traffic city. The 405, early and late, rough. But during the Olympics, smooth sailing. So what happens is you get an Olympics. Now, Washington, D.C. is a rough traffic city just because of the water and limitations. And I've never at any time of the day not been in traffic in D.C. To me, it's the worst traffic city I've ever been in times two. L.A., I can navigate and avoid it. Go the 101, the PCH. You can avoid some of the stuff certain times of the day. But Los Angeles, you think the traffic's going to be horrible. And the public, the consumers go, oh, yeah, let's leave that. Let's rent our house. Let's get out of town. Let's not go on the road. And people really rise to the moment. And they just stay off the road. They get out of town. By the way, Mitch Kupchak, Laker GM, joined us about 50 minutes ago. He was recently quoted as saying Kobe's going to be done in 2 years. And I asked him about Kobe's future.
He's never said, Mitch, this is it. But the indication has always been, let's get these last 2 years in. I think I can do it. And he's 36, so he'll be 38 in 2 years. Now, once again, I'm not going to sit here and say what's going to happen in 2 years. But I did make a comment a week or two ago. If you're looking to see Kobe play and you want to see him play before he retires, don't wait 2 years. Buy a ticket this year or next year. And beyond that, if he does come back, then that's gravy.
I think after 2 years, Kobe's going to want another year. I think he is. Tomorrow, Greg Cosell's on the show. 2 more weeks in the NFL. Things are sizing up. All you Cowboy haters, you better get used to it. We're also tomorrow on the show going to interview a guy. I'm fascinated by this. He was a 40-year-old high school football coach. He got a Division I job. And I think it's going to work. Remember Chip Kelly? You didn't know who he was 10 years ago, New Hampshire. Now, the no-huddle offense, that's Chip. 2 for the road. Humans think of cats as fuzzy and cute. But birds and small mammals have a vastly different opinion. Domestic cats kill between 1.5 and 3.7 billion birds. So cats are actually ruthless killers. Yeah. Both stray and owned cats are responsible for a far greater number of bird and mammal deaths in the U.S. than previously estimated. And science confirms guys who like hot sauce are alpha dogs. New research out of the Physiology and Behavior Journal reveals that men who opt for hot sauce have higher testosterone than dudes with milder taste. You can read all about the study. It's called Some Like It Hot in Physiology and Behavior Journals. Where you get that, I have no idea.
You a hot sauce guy?
I am now. Only thing I can't eat French food, can't eat rich, gamey meat.
You don't like spicy food either. Get out of here. I'd bring you a spicy soup back.
No. I used to like it. I was told I can't have it any longer.
Is that where you're partially lactose intolerant, or is that a different thing?
I'm not lactose intolerant. I have been warned about lactose and spicy foods.
Milk was a bad choice.
Because they create some inflammation, not great for me. It's not that I'm lactose intolerant. I'm intolerant generally of everything but lactose. But, so I'm off milk and I'm off spicy foods. And I got to tell you, I'm apathetic in the bedroom now. Now it explains everything. I'm going to bed at like 7:45 for the next week.
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and on ESPN News. The Thundering Herd Podcast.